Hello and welcome to my show on Quews News from our London studios. I'm Dr. Amara Sohail. Our topic today is growing Islamophobia in UK. As a Pakistani Muslim living in this country for decades, I believe that one of the core strengths of British values is that it is a very tolerant country, a society where people respect each other irrespective of their caste, color, or creed. However, in the recent years, we have seen a surge in Islamophobic incidents or attacks. And one of the recent examples is the killing of 3 innocent girls in Southport. That resulted in eruption of Islamophobic attacks on Muslims, even though the identity of the attacker was not revealed. To discuss that, we have invited today a very special guest, Dr. drakmalmakhdum, who is a retired psychiatrist, but an author, thinker, and an opinion maker as well. He has got a very keen eye on the situation, and in the past, he has voiced his concerns on hatred towards Muslims in this country and protecting Islamic values. So let's welcome Dr. drakmalmakhdum. Thank you very much, Dr. Makhdum, for joining us today. So what do you think is happening in UK at the moment? What is your opinion on this surge in Islamophobic attacks on Muslims following the incident in Southport?
Unlike many other people, I have a very clear view of this, and I look at it in a matrix. And the matrix is, or the template is that there are the 3 dimensions of the Muslim society that sees itself from within, the external view of the majority of Muslim society in Britain, and the overall collective integration and assimilation, or the melting of this. So there are 3 dimensions to it: the inward, the outward, and the collective. Then there are multiple other aspects, and the most important aspect is historical. And it is not complicated, it is clear. This idea that Britain is a very tolerant society, it is egalitarian, it is based on the rule of law, etc., is absolutely true. But these are aspirations. This is a process in the making. It is not that Britain has reached that stage. And if you look at the history in Britain, and I'm not talking of the colonial history of the British outside the Isles, I'm looking at British history within. There has been a great tolerance. So if you look at French authors like Voltaire, and when he talks about the British people while he was in England, he talks of their tolerance compared to the French. So comparatively, Britain has always been a more tolerant society. But the racist factors and the racist element has always been a part of it. So the idea that we get totally romanticized by this notion is an impractical and unreal expectation. And I think that what the Muslim community has done is that it has actually pushed that boundary a little too far in this belief that because the British say we are a very tolerant society, so it is a tolerant society, because they have not known, they don't know the history of Britain. I think that the Muslims who came to Britain in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, they have zero idea of history of Britain, and that is why now they're planning to teach for citizenship. So if you look at the history of Britain, there has always been this fractured ethnic divide. So if you look at the Paki bashing of the 1960s, you have the Bengali persecution of the Bengali communities in the 70s. You have the Jewish persecution by British people in a post World War II when they came over, and they were the ones who were living in East London. And then you had the Pakistani community being attacked, the skinheads. That's part of Britain. The EDL is a newer part, but the BNP has been a part of it. And people do not know about the National Socialist or the Nazi Party of Britain with Lord Mosley. Because they were always a right-wing extremist racist faction, always very vocal and very active. And of course, people are always talking about Enoch Powell's The Rivers of Blood speech. But if you ask a Pakistani, you ask a Muslim, first generation, the second generation, are they aware of this? So the thing is that I think that both the communities had not done their work to look at how to deal with one another. The Muslims have been victims of their own ignorance of British society. And of course, when people see this completely alien dress, alien behavior, alien language, swathes of lands which do not resemble their Britain, Bradford and Slough or High Wycombe or whatever, Birmingham, parts of Birmingham, etc. They are right that, there are people, thousands and thousands of people who do not speak the language. There is no involvement of grandparents in their grandchildren's education. There is no real engagement with the educational system because the grandparents cannot speak English and they are not able to take their children to the doctors or this and that. So what I'm saying is that this idea that we have been romanticized by this is a very practical and a fantastic idea that the Britain, that we should have known.
Makhdum, I totally agree with what you have just said, but if there are some people who believe that maintaining their identity and individuality is very important, even if they want to integrate in a system. So speaking the language is one thing, but the attire, how they dress up and all that, that should not be taken as something that people judge them for, because they can be highly educated, but they yet want to maintain their identity. But I mean, this kind of a culture or society has been going on for decades. But the current surge in Islamophobic incidents, we are seeing a significant rise. And incidents like in Southport, they are actually causing the escalation in the anti-Muslim thinking of not a majority of British people. It's probably less than 1/3 who have got some kind of anti-Islamic sentiments, and that is resulting in all that is happening all over the UK, and we have seen the incidents happening in Sutherland today as well. So, I mean, what do you say? Is it subsequent to the incident on 9/11 some decades ago, or it is a recent thing where there is more escalation of these anti-Semitic sentiments among public?
Now, I mean, of course, there are three aspects to your question. The first aspect is that people want to assert their identity. Of course, they can assert their identity, but the thing is they need to be aware that their identity is alien to the vast majority of how the other people identify themselves. So if they want to integrate or assimilate, or if they want to be part of that, then they need to be aware of that. Is that an awareness, or they are creating that mini little Pakistan or little Arabia within England, and then, talking of the Sharia and so on. So these have become the talking points, the sound bites for the Islamophobes and even for the mainstream politicians that, they talk of Sharia. Now, the thing is that these are aspects that I believe that the community has contributed itself. to that division. So that's number one. Number two is this idea that Britain has been a very tolerant society, and as I have identified, racism has been one of the main integral aspects of British society. When the Pakistanis used to come, and the Indians used to come, or the Irish used to come, what was it written? What were we told that was written on in the window? No. Pakistanis allowed, or no rooms to let for the Indians, or no rooms for the Irish, and so on. So this idea that we are landing into a society and we want to assert our individuality, totally ignorant of that society's past or that society's present. When we are aware that this is the reality of that society, then how do we negotiate our living? So that is number one. Number two is that, or the third aspect of your is that why is this suddenly coming up? It's not a sudden thing. Of course, since 9/11, because these things have certain triggers. So there is a latent tendency, as they say, that there's a potential murderer in every individual, and there's a potential, abuser in every person, and so on. So similarly, when these triggers occur, so 9/11 was a trigger, and that saw a massive narrative of terrorism and Islam being conflated and merged. There was no real leadership. There was no counter narrative. We were protesting. And we were the victims all the time, shouting and screaming and protesting. There was no narrative. There was no intellectual dialogue. People wrote about, clash of civilizations, and people wrote intellectual books, and they wrote theses. Where are the books from Muslims? You tell me in a single book that has been really written and taken roots in our society. Number one. Number two has been that this immigration thing and all that has been going on. Where was the Muslim narrative? We Muslims meet every week, every Friday in mosque and so on. What was the religious narrative about immigration? What was there was a massive discussion on anti-Semitism. Where was the discussion on Islamophobia in the mainstream? We are constantly complaining. What did we do?
It's the Muslim leaders. Do you think they're playing a good role in actually trying to integrate the society in a more positive way?
There are no Muslim leaders. I mean, there are people who belong to our community, and they are in this for themselves. When this, the Gaza thing occurred, and of course all these the killings carry on happening. So what happened? Where was the? I mean, it was actually the indigenous community that raised its voice. There were no real Muslim voices in that sense. And the thing is that there was no Muslim leadership there. The real leadership came from people like Jeremy Corbyn or Mr. Scahill or other people. And your interesting aspect, you said that that it is only a small fraction, only 4 million people voted for the Reform Party. But that is not entirely true. Why? Because you saw that the whole of the Conservative Party, when within the Conservative Party, Suala Braverman came up and identified Pakistanis as, not in tune or not compatible with British society. It was a dual attack on not only on Pakistani but primarily on Muslims as well. So when you say that, and where was the condemnation from the Conservative Party? There was no real condemnation from the Conservative Party of that statement. She was actually going to become the chairman.
Sorry. So do you think that British administration purposefully discriminate against Muslims, and that is resulting in the frustration amongst Muslim communities?
I don't think there is anything deliberate. I think it is very clearly ideological and philosophical. The thing is that Britain has its own interests. And those interests are Western interests. They are NATO-based interests. Their enemies are Russia, other such countries, North Korea, competition with China, whereas that is not really in tune in terms of Muslim society. Now Muslim communities here are constantly at odds with the national British policy in every aspect. And instead of trying to modify it through political and constructive and intellectual argument, there is that resentful shouting and screaming. There is no narrative that comes up. Now, I tell people that look at the success of the Jewish community in England, its success in politics and business and
Do you
media,
think that
and that is for us to emulate.
they get support from the government as well when Muslims don't have this kind of support they get from higher authorities?
They have earned it, but they never had that support. No, I don't agree with that. I don't think that they always had that support. The community in the beginning had a great deal of resentment about them, and there was because the thing is that we also don't know that the real problematical thing between the religious conflict has always been between Christianity and Judaism. It is a 2,000-year-old war, the Holocaust. It has been the Christian Europe that did not want any Jews within Europe. So the idea that somehow Jews just got their support is not entirely true. They earned it. They worked at it. They became part of the system, and they became top leaders in finances and media and other places. So what I would say is that while you are outside the community shouting at the core of establishment and not really trying to understand where the British interests lie, Britain has a very long history of being a Western superpower. We have landed in a Western superpower. Its interests have been embedded through centuries. And if you suddenly come, say from Pakistan or from India or from Arabia, and you carry that particular heritage in terms of the resentment and so on, and there is this, and the complaining and the protesting and the shouting attitude, how far are you going to go in this particular society?
How do you see this recent very sad incident in Southport resulted in anti-Islamic views of people, so much so that they victimized Muslims without even knowing the identity of the attacker? So how fair is that? Why did government not protect Muslims at that time? And why did they not reveal the identity so that these riots could not be erupted?
No, I don't think that the government expected that there would be that kind of a violent and vicious attack on Muslims, because that's I'm not privy to all that, but this is what I think. 40 policemen were injured badly and the bricks were being thrown. Now, the thing is that what is our narrative? Now, there is a complaining narrative once again evolving, the government didn't protect us. How did we protect us? Did we create a narrative? Did our leaders come out and say, where were all the priests and the Maulvis and the mullahs and the political leaders, standing hand in hand with wearing wreaths of flowers and so on? The Prime Minister was there. Where were the Muslim Council of Britain and, Muslim Vote and all these people, all these leaders, standing over there? Were all the burqa-clad women, all the niqabi and hijabi women with flowers and crying and so on, the way the community was? There was a mosque nearby. So what I'm trying to say is that if you do not participate in the political process, if you do not become part of the political process, you cannot continue to blame except yourself. And I'm not saying that other people are not to blame, but what I'm trying to say is that they do not feel the need to appease you. because you are only a 5% minority. You're divided. Your leadership has zero presence in the core of decision making in Britain. So, as a result, what is happening is that you have been totally marginalized. There is a genocide going on, but what is happening? You do not see any real, the Muslim parliamentarians, most of them did not say anything.
So why
They
is
didn't
that?
even
Why
vote.
do you
All
think
of
that
them
they are
didn't
not
even vote.
actually raising voice, and why are they not representing Muslim communities? Why do you think is the case?
Because, yeah, but the reason is because they're not representatives of Muslim community. They are part of two political parties. They are one is a Labour Party and the other is Conservative. They have to follow the party's policies. They're not representing an Islamic party or the Muslim party. There isn't one. And so that is the thing that they cannot, or if they do, they have to do it in like, I'll give you an example. There are the conservative friends of Israel or the labor friends of Israel. Okay, shouldn't there be such a caucus in both the parties about Muslims and so on? Not necessarily adversarial, but negotiative, sort of discussive. So whereas there is a lot of money in Muslim communities. Where are our media
But you know,
houses? How many
you
media
mentioned
houses do we
about
have?
the mosque in the neighborhood where this incident happened. I was reading that the same mosque actually raised £25,000 last year for a British charity. So, I mean, in situations like this, people forget the good deeds that Muslims are doing for the community, and they only think that this sad incident happened because a Muslim did that, which actually is absolutely incorrect. So why are Muslims under
But
fire
the
all the
problem
time?
is, no. I mean, I tell you, because there has been the British society started to fracture recently when the Brexit scenario occurred. Because of Brexit, Britain was divided into the Remainers and the Brexiteers. And the nationalism was created, or this false nationalism was created, and people like Farage and people like Tommy Robinson and were kind of mainstreamed in that, and they led through Boris Johnson and the Conservatives. They led the Brexit. And what it resulted was the two pronged attack on British society. The 14 years of Tory austerity, which broke the back of the British working class. Every British working class family has been devastated, not by migrants, not by anybody else, but big money, and Brexit and the austerity, primarily the austerity. There have been 14 years of withdrawal of public funding from the NHS, from Social Security, from housing, from education, from childcare, from salaries and wages of people's wages have fallen down because of this austerity. The rich have become mega rich and the poor have become mega poor. And as a result, what's happened is that this austerity has made the working class person extremely angry. Now, where is the Muslim narrative in trying to say? I mean, I could see it 5 years ago what's going to happen. And I wrote a little piece that we are walking into the 1930s, where this time Muslims will be the target, because this is what has happened before. But the problem is that our Muslim leaders or Muslim community is not aware of British history, European history, what happened in 1930s. This is exactly the case. European societies are very tolerant, very affluent when they are affluent, and very tolerant and very embracing and inclusive. The moment when they see their children not being fed properly, when their kids have to have one meal a day, when there is not proper housing, when money has been taken, when they have to sit in casualty for 12 hours, after having a mild heart attack, then there is that anger and resentment. And it is very easy for the demagogues like the Farages and the Robinsons of this world to then get on that and then hijack that anger. And the problem is that there is no foresight in the Muslim community. There is no leadership in the Muslim community. There is no insight into what is happening. We are only dealing with, the issues. The Arabs are dealing with the issues in Arabia.
Muslims should do to improve their representation at a government level? Because you said that the parliamentarians, they are not actually the true representatives of Muslim communities. So what do you think Muslims should do in order to be heard in the parliament?
The thing is that we are 5 to 6% of the British population, which is quite a significant number. It's actually, well, third largest majority, because the largest population group is an atheist group. They don't believe in anything. And then, of course, the Christian 46%, we are 6%, and the other community, well, we by means the divided Muslims, and then we doesn't really mean we. What I'm saying is Muslims per se who identify themselves as Muslims. So the issue is that there needs to be a communicative, intellectual narrative and dialogue with the local community. When you live in a ghettoized, isolated mini city within a city where nobody speaks the local language, and when you go to Southall, my kids used to play a game, spot an Englishman, and so on. So, so you go to places where you don't see that. It is not really Britain. And when these clerics, these really destructive clerics come, they cannot speak English, they cannot communicate, they live in this country, their grammar is poor, their diction is poor, their communication is zero, and they are talking of Sharia, and they're talking of women must do this and women must not do that, and we are going to conquer and this and that. What is it? These are, battle drums. And when there is a community which is already reeling under austerity and being destroyed through financial exploitation, not by Muslims, not by immigrants,
but sometimes we see that these Islamic clerics or mullahs, they are actually obstructive in the progression of Muslim communities by putting hurdles where they think that women should not be working, this is not their role, men should be the breadwinners and all that. So, what message will you give to the Islamic community or Muslims to have some kind of, show some progressive attitudes in order to integrate with the society better, so that this kind of incidents, of course, we hope that things like that don't happen again, but of course we can't stop it. But in situations where these things happen, why should Muslims be under fire? Why should they not?
Simple. The answer is very simple. It is every Muslim has a mobile phone. They have Instagram, social media, and everything. Now, how many Muslims have emailed the BBC about the BBC's inappropriate coverage of Muslim issues? How many Muslims, when they saw this Anjum Chaudhry, this cleric who was talking, and constantly giving me heart attacks in terms of how he was destroying the image of Muslims in Britain? How many Muslims wrote to mainstream media on their emails saying that this is not appropriate? We reject that. And that is why the local community was constantly saying, where are the Muslim voices opposing these terrorist clerics, these radicalized clerics? When these clerics come and they talk of, frothing from the mouth, trying to take over Britain and take over Europe and all that, where are the Muslim voices? If 1 million Muslims in Britain write to the mainstream media and say that these guys are, total jokers, they're morons, They don't know what they're talking about. We reject them. Then there are statistics available for everybody to see that the Muslim community is not with these guys.
But do you not think that national media should also have the responsibility not to actually highlight people who have got these extremist views on national
No,
TV?
but why? I mean, why should they? They are part of this society, this community. They come with their own personal biases. They come with their philosophical biases. They come from their political biases. National media, why should they have? National media should only represent what they feel it should be represented. They are, if there are forces in the national media which are influenced by Muslims, then of course they should. I mean, I give you one statistic. In 1967, when the 7-day war or 6-day war occurred between Arabs and Israel, 19% of Americans supported Israel. 19%, 1-9. All the others were with Arabs. And now you look at, just before the recent genocidal battles between the two, you see that it was totally opposite. It was 99% versus 1% in the US. And now it has only changed because I think one party is kind of, pushing the boundaries and, crossing that line in the sand. But that is why I think it is through communities, involvement. I tell you, I stated that in 2001, there was a little conference in Cambridge, and I said that unless Pakistanis, it was about Pakistan, how we should develop, relationships between here and Britain and Pakistan. I said, unless Pakistanis stop thinking about Pakistani politics all the time, and they engage in the political processes over here, we will remain a fringe influence. And if you look at it today, every Pakistani is worried about what is happening in Lahore, what Maryam Nawaz Sharif is doing, what Nawaz Sharif is doing, what Imran Khan is doing. We are living in Britain. We should be looking at what is happening here. We spend hours and hours every day looking at Pakistan. And that is why we are a ghettoized society. That is why we have zero information about British politics. And we are expecting, as if, we are those special children and, mama should come and put a lollipop in our, give this ice cream to us. National media should do this, government should do this. What have we been doing?
Absolutely right. I think Pakistanis believe that it makes them more patriotic if they think about their own homeland and not talk too much about British, but that doesn't mean we are less
what
patriotic
homeland?
towards
Britain
UK,
is our homeland.
because we are
Pakistan
British
is not our
citizens.
homeland. No, Pakistan is not our homeland.
Yeah,
So
we
the
live
thing is,
here and our loyalties should be with the country where we are living in, where we are earning our livings and all that. That is absolutely correct. But we just hope that incidents like we have seen in the last few days, they should stop. And as you rightly mentioned, that Muslim communities, they need to actually revolutionize their thought processes, and they should take steps in order to reduce these anti-Islamic feelings amongst the British public, because that's the only way forward. If
give you an example. There are, hundreds of thousands of people came out for the Gaza marches and so on. Now, where are all those Muslims when this atrocity occurred? And they knew that, were they asleep when they saw Reform Party take 4 million votes? Were they asleep when they saw all these things happening around them? So, and those are Muslim, significant Muslim population cities, Sunderland and this and that, wherever Southport and etc. There are mosques and everything. Where were all those Muslims over there? I mean, I didn't see them on the television. So what I'm trying to say is,
incidents, and we believe that nothing like that should happen. The innocent people should not be victimized by any religious believer.
No, but the thing is, but what are the facts? Should is good, but what are the facts? The facts are that terrorism, radicalization, these things happen. This time, what we see is that instead of radicalized Muslims, there are radicalized Christians. So there was a radicalized Christian, Axel Ruda Cubana. He murdered these three innocent flowers, angels, and tried to kill 8 more. He could have killed more. He was a Christian. He is a Christian. He's a choir boy. His family's life is, totally involved with the church. So, what kind of radicalization did he receive? So we are looking at radicalization now. What is the other radicalization? You see white supremacist radicalized Christians attacking British cities. Now, is this the narrative coming out from anywhere?
Yeah, that
Right?
is why we are having this show to actually make people think that it's any such incidents, they are not actually done by Muslims alone,
What is it?
which is the misconception.
No. The thing is, it's not the alone thing, but the thing is that we should be aware. We should now be aware and make people aware in an intellectual manner, in a discursive manner, in a narrated manner. That look, guys, what we see now is white, radicalized, neo-Nazi, fascist gangs invading British towns. And a radicalized Christian has murdered 3 small children. So there is this radicalization, which is now far more dangerous. And that does not actually negate the fact that there has been radicalization in Muslims, and there are clerics who are radicalizing Muslim youth. And we must stop them ourselves. And now we need to identify that there is radicalization happening in certain ghettos of impoverished British society, where they have been broken by the 14 years of conservative austerity, and they are being now misled. And I also believe that big money and maybe some international players are also involved in this.
Absolutely correct,
Because there was a
is always
particular
a
account.
political agenda to such
There
things.
was a political account in India which actually narrated, George Galloway was saying that this thing that he was a Muslim and he was an immigrant came from an account, this fabricated story that his name was something Shukri or whatever. It came from an account in India.
Yeah, no, I
So
agree
there are
with what you have
international
said.
players
It's
as
an
well.
eye-opener for all of us, all the Muslims living in this country. We should, this is a very sad incident, but it should be an eye-opener, and we should take all the necessary steps in order to get rid of these hateful thoughts amongst a fraction of British
But
society.
it's the start. It's only the start. It's going to get worse. The thing is that I read the list. It is being circulated that 24 or 25 cities, the EDL, the English Defence League, has planned marches in front of mosques in 25 cities. So it's a start. It's going to get worse. So unless we get to grips with our own communities, and we need to now start becoming aware, protect ourselves. We need to start engaging with the majority community. We need to start engaging with the police. We need to start engaging with the government, and not in a protesting and entitled manner, but as part of British society.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Makhdum. That was a very insightful show today. I hope that your message is conveyed to the Muslim community, especially in this country. So we really appreciate your views. Thank you very much once again.
My pleasure.
So viewers, you heard Dr. Makhdum's views on the current Islamophobic trend in the UK. He has given a very clear message for community leaders as well as Muslim politicians that it is their responsibility to give a clear direction to the public and bring back the narrative that Muslims are a very integral part of this society, and they have contributed in a very positive way to the society in every aspect of life. And likewise, not only Muslims need to understand that, but other non-Muslim society members should always think that any sad happenings are not because of the Muslims in the country, it is, which is absolutely a bad narrative, and they should change their mindset. So viewers, keep watching our show. We'll bring back more issues that our community is facing at the moment. Thank you very much.